Hi everybody, Matt Bernier and Dan Illman taking a look back at the Grade 1 Pennsylvania Derby this past Saturday afternoon. Down at Parks, 3-year-olds going 1 1/8 on the main track. All eyes were on the latest star from the barn of Bob Baffert. That's West Coast, the Travers winner. So they break from the gate. Very similar trip to the one that he worked out in the Travers. Go right to the front.
And you see Mike Smith is aggressive with him coming out of the gate. Not the greatest start for West Coast, but Smith knows, I want to be up close to the pace. I want to sit off Outplay, who's being tested for class for the first time. And you give West Coast in the form he's in right now, this kind of trip, you're not beating him.
Outplay is going to set your early pace here anyway, going in opening quarter 23-1. They're going to get a half mile in 47-1. And at this point, again, you've got the perfect ideal position for West Coast. From here, everyone else coming from the back, whether it's a horse like Timeline, who's down in behind horses, or IRAP, who's a little bit farther back than he's accustomed to being, they're all going to need to have him on tight.
Absolutely. For Mike Smith right now, Outplay is merely a target. He is not worrying about him at all. He is letting West Coast settle into his rhythm, and West Coast, pretty much on his own, is going to get to the front right now over Outplay. You mentioned Timeline down towards the inside. I think a lot of his fans were disappointed that he wasn't more forwardly placed, but how can you complain about this trip?
You see Timeline right now, he's about 3 lengths off of it down on the inside to his outside, about 3 or 4 paths off the rail. That's Irish Warcry trying to get involved right now, and IRAP is following him. Meanwhile, toward the front end, Outplay's going to start to feel the heat a little bit, and now you've just got a superior animal that's about to take over.
Smith just dropped his hands a little bit, and West Coast, with about 5/16 of a mile to go, is going to make the front. We're going to talk about what happens here. He's going to make his final lead change a little bit early, and I wonder if it's because he's just getting a little bit bored out there. He's up front, and he's saying, where's the competition?
You're going to see it come right about now. There it is, and that is much earlier than he's ever done it. But at this point, again, you see everyone else is all out. Mike Smith's just going to give him a bit of a reminder here, and he's going to continue on and draw off. He eventually wins by 7 1/4 lengths down the lane, and another tour de force from this horse.
His Travers was breathtaking. This performance, very, very good. Again, maybe not to the level of the Travers, but he won by 7, and I think he has taken over as the best 3-year-old in the country and the leader for the Eclipse Award, even over the Derby winner, Always Dreaming.
West Coast wins as the 9-10 favorite in the Pennsylvania Derby. Another Grade 1 to his name for Baffert and Smith. IRAP runs second, pays $3.40 to place. Giuseppe the Great for Wayne Lucas, coming from way out of the pack.
Zito.
I'm sorry, Wayne Lucas and Nick Zito. It's a Nicky Zito situation here to round out your trifecta. The try for 50 cents pays $33.60. Apologies, Nick. West Coast, again, this is a horse that Baffert, we've seen the difference in how Baffert has handled a couple of horses that weren't ready for the Triple Crown. Last year with Arrogate, this year with West Coast. He takes his time, lets them come along. They don't have to deal with all the rigors of the Triple Crown, and I think it's showing and it's paying off. This horse has never been out of the exacta.
You have to remember, this horse, I don't believe, ran it 2.
No.
So he has done all this in a relatively short amount of time. He's won at Los Alamitos with that wide trip coming from way off the pace. A lot of folks thought, well, I guess he can't be close to the pace. Wrong. In the Travers, he was up close to the pace and he pounded those horses. And he's just seeing dead red right now. He is the late blooming horse that might be getting good at the right time. The question I have for you is he ready to step it up against older horses? At 1 1/4 to me shouldn't be an issue the way this horse looks. I mean, the way he finishes, 1 1/4 should be perfectly fine. The question is he going to be able to take a step up against horses like Collected, against horses like Arrogate, against horses like Gunrunner? Baffert's got 2 of those 3.
1 1/4 doesn't look like it's going to be any sort of an issue for this horse. Again, 6 of 8 lifetime. He's over $1.5 million in earnings. I look at it with the 107 buyer that he earned here, on the heels of the 108 buyer that he earned in the Travers. He earned a 132 time form rating. I believe he earned that exact same number in the Travers. Those figures aren't that far off the big boys, but they're still far enough from the big boys that, in my opinion, and I've seen a lot of people that have great opinions that really like this horse and think all of a sudden he is a major, major threat. To me, I still think he's got a little bit of work to do, and he feels right now, to me anyway, like an underlay.
Oh, that's very fair to say, although you could argue that the 1 1/4 and the fact that he's only raced 8 times and might be filling out at just the right time, maybe that brings that a little bit closer to the older horses, but price is, of course, going to be the key when it comes to the Breeders' Cup Classic. And you're right. Right now, a long way away from the Breeders' Cup, it does feel like there's a lot of buzz on West Coast.
We talk about lead changes ad nauseum. We've heard from some folks that think it's nonsense, and that's entirely fair. The people that care about it, and as well as us, does this bother you? Because it bothers me.
I have to think about it for a little bit. I mean, a lot of very well-respected horsemen have told me that when you see horses change like that early, it could be a sign of a minor physical problem. It could be a sign that the horse is getting tired. It could be a sign that the horse is simply green. Neither one of those, none of those three things, by the way, are very positive.
Right.
But I think this might have simply been the case that West Coast made the lead. He was looking around and saying, what do I do now?
Yeah.
And it's still a sign of greenness, but you saw the way he finished. It's not like he was swapping back to his left lead again and drifting out and other signs that maybe there's some sort of discomfort. I'm willing to give him one here, although it is worth noting it's something he usually does not do. He's usually much better and much smoother with his lead changes, waiting until he straightens away to the stretch like they're trained to do. The
unfortunate news coming out of the Pennsylvania Derby is that the runner-up, IRAP, came out of it with a pretty significant injury, potentially life-threatening. It sounds like it's certainly career-ending. He's having surgery today, I believe. This is being taped on Monday. First and foremost, hopefully he comes out of everything just fine. As far as a racehorse is concerned, to me, he has been the horse that has had the biggest improvement from the beginning to this point here.
I agree 1,000%. And it's such a shame that this horse was hurt. Doug O'Neill's always had faith in him. You remember he ran him in the Futurity last year, I believe, at Los Alamitos as a maiden against Mastery. This horse always had a great pedigree, and you always had a feeling, boy, you know, I believe he won his maiden in the Bluegrass.
Yes.
He never lost faith in this horse, and this horse eventually rewarded Doug O'Neill. I think it was just a maturity. And we saw in some of those minor derbies getting back on track. It's a shame he got hurt here. Hopefully he could be saved for stallion purposes because oh boy, he's got that pedigree.
And that's the thing he does. He has a beautiful pedigree. Obviously, we talked about it. He's a half to Speightstown and he's by Tisnow, so you've got plenty of pedigree as far as distance is concerned. Hopefully everything is okay with IRAP. Giuseppe the Great for Nick Zito. We've always thought that he's a nice horse, but I mean, I don't think we have any sort of false indications that he's truly a grade 1 caliber rider.
I agree with that. I think that Nick's going to continue to take a shot, though. I think he's had faith in Giuseppe the Great, and Giuseppe the Great, for the most part, has rewarded him in the Jim Dandy for a second. It looked like Giuseppe the Great was going to beat the Derby winner and the Preakness winner, and Good Samaritan was able to come over the top of him. This was a nice performance for Giuseppe the Great. Something tells me this is about as good as it gets, but I want to talk about Game Over a little bit. I think that this lightly raced horse, and we can talk about the controversy surrounding Jorge Navarro all we want. This is a very lightly raced horse. I think he is a nice future as a 4-year-old if he is managed correctly. I think distance is not going to be an issue for him. He is learning the game. He's not ready for West Coast right now. I'm very interested to see what we get from him as a 4-year-old.
He's only started 5 times. He was wide every step of the way here in this race. He was close enough to the pace that maybe that kind of took a little bit out of him as well, because you see some of these other horses were making big moves from the back of the pack. I agree with you. Look, we've always thought that Game Over is a very, very interesting prospect, if not this year, certainly next year if he goes on for Jorge Navarro. Now it's time to talk about the disappointments in the race. We have to talk about Timeline. We have to talk about Irish War Cry. Let's start with Timeline. As someone that picked him and someone that thought he had a big, big chance.
Did you think he was going to the front?
Well, I didn't know if he would make the front, but I thought he would be right there pushing out play. Instead, I wonder if all the chatter of the inside being bad, whether it was valid or not, I wonder if that started to play into the decision making, because Javier had no interest in being down on the inside. They took him back and they got him 2-3 path.
Yeah, and I think
I think it took him out of his game.
I think it might have taken him out of his game a little bit, but still, you got to finish.
100%.
He didn't finish at all.
Run.
He didn't go past the tired pace setter Outplay, who was beaten with 5/16 of a mile to go. And I'm sure Chad's going to go over Timeline with a fine-tooth comb right now, because when he won that race, the Haskell Prep, the long branch of the Pegasus, didn't he grab a quarter or something coming out of the gate? And I think there was some concern there. And since then, I wonder if Timeline's kind of been Timeline. I wonder if maybe something's bothering him a little bit. I'm not going to really complain too much about the trip. Okay, he was down close to the inside after breaking from the rail, but he just didn't finish. He just did not seem very interested at all.
If you're Graham Motion, what do you do with Irish War Cry? Because now we have finally bucked the on-off sort of pattern. Problem is, he's been with 2 offs. When things go his way, he can run a fast race. The problem is, it seems like he needs everything perfect for him.
This race was a very interesting sort of parallel between the early season 3-year-olds and the late season
100%.
ones. And I think we always were dubious, and they're nice horses, the Always Dreamings, the Cloud Computings, the Irish War Cries, the Classic Empires. But I think we were always thought they all have holes.
Yeah.
And we're just waiting for someone like a West Coast, so the 2nd Division 3-year-old, to sort of take the bull by the horns. Irish War Cry made a nice sort of mid-move into this race, got troubled a little bit when IRAP came into him in the lane, but there was no finish here. I still think he's a nice horse, and I think Graham will eventually figure out the right spot for him.
West Coast, he has certainly stamped himself as the fresh face in Bob Baffert's barn as far as major contenders are concerned. Yes or no, Breeders' Cup Classic contender?
I think he's an absolutely Breeders' Cup Classic contender. 107 buyer speed figure in this race, lightly raced, 1.25 miles, no issue. I mean, will he take to Del Mar? That's the question I think they all got to answer.
He won the Grade 1 Travers. He has now won the Grade 1 Pennsylvania Derby, and he may be the leader in the clubhouse as far as champion 3-year-old is concerned. West Coast and Bob Baffert, they win the Pennsylvania Derby.